Welcome back. Today, we're going to explore something pretty fascinating. It might just explain why keeping up with everyone feels like a full-time job sometimes.
Right.
Or maybe why you wonder if you can really make space for another close friend, you know?
Uh-huh. It's a common feeling.
We're talking about this idea that our brains, believe it or not, might actually have a kind of limit, a hard limit on how many stable, meaningful relationships we can genuinely keep up with.
Exactly. A really intriguing concept.
So our mission today is to unpack this thing known as Dunbar's number. Where did it come from? What does it mean for us, for our social lives? Is there really a cap on friendship?
Yeah.
I mean, think about that old breakup line, let's just be friends. Or when you meet someone new and think, oh yeah, definitely room for one more.
Of course that feels intuitive.
It does, but maybe the answer is a bit surprising. Apparently our brains do seem to have a kind of capacity limit for these deep, stable connections.
It definitely challenges how we think about our social networks, especially today.
Okay, so let's get into it. This idea is known as Dunbar's number, named after Robin Dunbar, right? A British anthropologist.
That's the one, Robin Dunbar. And the core theory really comes down to our brain's structure, specifically a part called the neocortex.
The neocortex, that's the wrinkly outer bit, involved in complex thought.
Exactly. Complex thought, language, and importantly here, social thinking, social cognition. Dunbar's research basically suggests that based on the size of our neocortex, humans can comfortably manage stable, meaningful relationships with about 150 people.
150? Wow, that sounds very specific.
It does, doesn't it?
Like, what happens 151? Does your brain just, crash? Because I know people who seem to know everyone.
Yeah, good question. It gets right to the nuance. That 150, it isn't like a strict, rigid number. Think of it more like an average or maybe a general range.
Right.
People often cite it as somewhere between 100 and, say, 250. The key isn't the exact digit, but the idea that there is a limit, a cognitive one.
So it's a ballpark figure, not a hard line.
Precisely, a ballpark. But it does suggest that trying to maintain genuine connections with vastly more people than that becomes, well, incredibly difficult.
Right, that makes a bit more sense. So if this capacity is around 150, how does that actually play out? Are all 150 people like best friends? Because that definitely doesn't feel right.
No, absolutely not. You're spot on there. And that's where Dunbar himself talks about these circles of friendship.
Circles, like layers.
Exactly. Imagine concentric circles, like ripples on a pond. Each circle represents a different level of closeness and crucially requires a different kind of investment from you, from your social brain power.
Okay, walk me through these circles.
Sure. So right at the very center, the absolute core, you have your most intimate relationships. Dunbar often pegs this number at around 1.5.
1.5. How do you get half a person?
Well, that half usually represents a romantic partner. That one person you're most deeply connected to, your main emotional anchor. Could be a spouse, could be just one incredibly close best friend for some people.
Ah, okay. That 1.5 is a powerful image. Really highlights how small that inner sanctum is.
It does. Then, moving out just a bit, the next circle is typically around 5 people. These are your closest, most trusted friends, your go-to people.
The ones you'd call in the middle of the night.
Exactly. Your crisis support, your biggest confidants. You invest a lot of time and emotional energy here, and ideally, you get that back. They're your rock, really.
Okay, so 1.5, then 5.
Then comes the next layer, what Dunbar calls the good friends circle. That's about 15 people. These are folks you see pretty regularly, you socialize with often, maybe people you'd trust to watch your kids or who you share big life events with.
Still quite close, but maybe not quite the 3 a.m. call level.
Probably not, generally speaking. There's a strong bond, frequent contact, deep understanding, but maybe not that same level of profound intimacy as the inner 5.
Okay, so we're up to about 15 plus the 5 plus the 1.5. Still feels like a fairly small number of truly close people.
It is, relatively speaking. And the next circle out holds about 50 people. He calls these social friends or maybe just acquaintances you know reasonably well.
Like people you see at parties or work colleagues you chat with?
Yeah, exactly. People from clubs, community groups. You're friendly, you know bits about their lives, you definitely stop and talk. But they're not your inner circle confidants.
Got it.
And then we finally get to that main Dunbar number circle. the 150. These are, let's say, acquaintances you have real connection with, people from work, your wider community, people you'd probably invite to or expect to see at a wedding or maybe a funeral.
So you know who they are, there's some history, but the interaction isn't super frequent or deep.
Right. It's kind of a network where everyone sort of knows everyone else, at least by reputation. There's a sense of shared community.
And are there circles even beyond that 150?
Oh, yeah. Dunbar talks about layers out to maybe 500 people whose faces you recognize, like nodding acquaintances in your neighborhood, and even up to 1,500 people you can put a name or a context to, maybe famous people or someone you just see around. But those aren't really relationships in the same way.
So it's a whole spectrum, from deep intimacy to just recognition.
Exactly. With that 150 being the sort of outer limit for maintaining genuine reciprocal social ties.
Wow. Okay, that breakdown is really helpful. So what does this all mean for us, in the real world, managing our friendships or work connections, especially when everything tells us to network, network, network?
Well, it really highlights that relationships, especially the meaningful ones, they're dynamic. They take work, serious investment. People can move between these circles inwards or outwards.
But it's not easy.
Not at all. And here's the kicker. It takes a lot of time. The research suggests something pretty startling. To move someone from that outer 150 group into the, say, 50-person good friend circle, it takes about 200 hours of interaction, spread over several months.
200 hours for one person?
Yep.
Wow, that's huge. I'm just thinking about my week. Finding 200 hours for one new deep friendship, that sounds almost impossible.
It's a massive investment, isn't it? Of time, of emotional energy. So if you've ever felt stretched thin trying to deepen lots of connections at once, well, there's a reason for that.
No kidding. That really puts things in perspective.
And here's another interesting idea that comes out of this, something many people kind of feel intuitively. When you start a new, really serious romantic relationship, like getting married, it might effectively cost you, so to speak, maybe 2 friends from your innermost circles. Not that you ditch them.
Right, hopefully not.
No, but your brain's limited capacity means there's a reshuffle. This new, incredibly close person demands significant cognitive and emotional focus. And that can mean others might, sort of naturally, shift to a slightly less intimate layer. Your available bandwidth gets reallocated.
That's fascinating. And I think, many of us can relate to that feeling. Even if we couldn't quite put our finger on why, our social energy just isn't infinite.
It seems not. It suggests there's a bit of a zero-sum game, at least for that really close, intense bandwidth.
Which helps explain why sometimes you just feel like you can't give everyone the same deep attention all at once. Okay, but back to the number itself. Where did Dunbar actually get 150 from? How did he calculate that?
Right, good question. It wasn't just pulled out of a hat. He started by looking at primates, our evolutionary cousins.
Okay.
He compared the size of their neocortex again, that brain region linked to complex thought and social skill, to the typical size of their social groups.
And he found a link?
A clear correlation, yeah. Primate species with bigger neocortexes tended to live in larger, more complex social groups.
Which makes sense, I guess. More brain power to handle more relationships.
Exactly. More capacity to process complex social information. Remember who's who, who's allied with whom, all that stuff needed for group living. So he took that pattern and he applied it to humans. He looked at the size of the human neocortex and used the primate trend to predict what our natural group size should be. And the number he landed on was around 150.
So it's rooted in our biology, our evolution.
That's the idea. It connects right into evolutionary theory. Humans are fundamentally tribal primates. We evolved to live and cooperate in groups.
And 150 is maybe the optimal size for that kind of close-knit, everyone knows everyone group.
That's the hypothesis. A group size where you can manage all those relationships, maintain trust, and cooperate effectively without needing really rigid formal hierarchies. Your brain can track the necessary social information for a group about that size.
That's really compelling. But okay, here's the big question for me. Does this actually hold up? Like in the real world, in history, in modern society?
Yeah.
Because, today we have social media with hundreds, thousands of friends. How does that fit?
Great point. And yes, this is where it gets really interesting because there's corroborating evidence from all sorts of places. It's quite remarkable.
Like what?
Well, think about historical societies. Hunter-gatherer groups, which is how humans lived for most of our existence, typically organize themselves into bands of roughly this size.
Around 150.
In that ballpark, yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense, right? Survival depended on intense cooperation and trust, which is easier when everyone genuinely knows each other.
Okay. Any other examples?
Loads, actually. Look at early English villages back in the 11th century. Records suggest their populations often hovered around 150, 160 people.
Wow.
And even today, some traditional communities, like the Amish for instance, they often tend to split and form a new settlement when their community size gets close to 150.
Really? They don't consciously track the number, do they?
Probably not. It seems to be more of a natural social dynamic. Beyond that size, maybe the informal social control and cohesion start to break down, making a split feel necessary.
That's fascinating, almost like an organic limit.
It seems that way. We even see hints of it in military history. Roman army units, for example, were often structured around 140 soldiers or so.
An effective size for cohesion and communication under pressure.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Keeps things manageable without excessive bureaucracy. When groups get much bigger, you tend to see more formal structures, more layers of command, breaking things down into smaller units again.
Okay, history, military. What about just like everyday life now?
Even there, think about Christmas cards. Kind of a quaint example now, maybe.
Yeah.
But studies have looked at the average number of people traditionally sent, and guess what? It hovered around 150.
No way!
Yeah. And wedding guest lists. You might think they'd be huge, but the average tends to land somewhere around 148 people.
Yeah.
Again, it's not exact science, but it's intriguingly consistent.
Okay, that's uncanny. But what about online? My Facebook friends list is way bigger than 150.
Yes, the digital world. Well, a study back in 2011 looked at Twitter interactions, and they found that even though people might follow thousands, they typically only actively interacted with, replied to, mentioned between 100 and 200 other users.
So even online, our actual engagement stays within that Dunbar range.
It seems to suggest that. Technology lets us broadcast to more people or have more listed friends, but our core capacity for active, meaningful interaction might still be constrained by our cognition.
So zooming out then, it's less about obsessing over the exact number, 150, and more about understanding this fundamental idea that our social processing power has limits.
Exactly. You've nailed it. The precise number isn't the main point. The core insight is that our brains have a finite capacity for maintaining these strong, stable social bonds.
And building them takes real work.
Real work, a significant investment of time, of energy, just like any other important project. The theory suggests we're kind of evolutionarily domesticated, you could say, for life in a tribe of roughly this size. It's the sweet spot.
That really is a powerful takeaway. We feel like we can just keep adding connections endlessly, but maybe our brains are saying, hold on a minute.
Right. And recognizing that limit actually highlights how incredibly valuable those genuine connections really are.
It really makes you think about where you're putting your social energy, doesn't it? Your attention. That feels like the most precious resource sometimes.
Absolutely. And maybe this whole idea of Dunbar's number gives us a useful question to ask ourselves. Looking at your own circles, how are you managing that energy?
Yeah.
Where are you investing your time? Are you maybe spreading yourself too thin across too many surface level ties? Or are you consciously nurturing those relationships in the inner circles, the ones that really matter?
Yeah, it prompts you to consider which relationships truly nourish you, the reciprocal ones. And maybe understanding this brain limit isn't about restriction, but about helping you prioritize.
It could definitely help focus your social efforts, maybe leading to deeper, more satisfying connections in the long run. It's not about cutting people off, but understanding what's sustainable for you.
Really makes you think. Well, thank you for joining us and exploring this fascinating idea today.